Welcome to ancient Greece, the birthplace of philosophy, democracy, and your personal discomfort. You've heard the stories. Gods walking among mortals, athletes competing nude under a heroic sun, Socrates dropping quotables in the agora like a proto-influencer, the architecture, flawless, the poetry, lyrical, the people, chiseled, tanned, noble. Now forget all of that, because you're not a hero. You're not even a notable background character. You're just a regular human, probably poor, definitely unwashed, and already behind on your chores. You don't wake up to harp music or the scent of figs wafting through a marble villa. You wake up with a stiff neck and a beetle crawling out of your ear. This is not the Greece from textbooks or travel posters. This is the version with dirt under its fingernails and goats yelling at nothing. And it's not trying to impress you. This is sand and iron. And this is your completely average, completely awful day in ancient Greece. You begin the day horizontal, but barely. Your bed is a wooden frame with a few crisscrossed ropes and a lump of straw. The straw pokes, the ropes sag. Your pillow, a bundled up old tunic that smells like whoever wore it last. Possibly you, possibly not. You are sweating, and it's not even sunrise yet. You reach to scratch your ankle and discover that something has already beaten you to it. Fleas, mites, early morning existential panic. Hard to say. But whatever it is, it's winning. There's no sheet, no mattress, no linen spray promising lavender dreams. Just you, your wooden box bed, and the unrelenting soundtrack of a donkey braying somewhere near your head. Congratulations, you're in ancient Greece. Your house, if you can call it that, is a modest one-story box built of sun-dried mud brick, which is a polite way of saying dirt that barely holds together. The walls crack in the heat, they drip in the rain, and the whole thing leans ever so slightly to one side, like it gave up trying to be vertical centuries ago. There's no glass in your windows, just shutters. And those shutters are cracked. Every sound from outside filters in like you live inside a conch shell of domestic chaos. Sandals slapping the dirt road, someone yelling about debt, the high-pitched complaint of a goat that absolutely hates being milked. Again, privacy, laughable. You can hear your neighbours chewing. They can hear you try not to. There is no plumbing. Not because yours is broken, but because plumbing doesn't exist for people like you. You do not flush. You do not wash. You squat. Somewhere vaguely away from where you eat. That's the whole strategy. And no, you don't have toilet paper. You have a broken bit of pottery that used to be someone's dinner plate. It's called a pessoi. You wipe with it. You share it. Sometimes you even put your initials on it, just to make it extra cursed. Still romantic, you rise from bed, which is generous, because what you actually do is stand up in stages while every joint in your body cracks like ancient kindling. You slept curled around a mosquito bite and a sense of unfinished responsibility. You move slowly because everything hurts. Why? Because you've been doing hard labor since childhood. Because nutrition is theoretical. Because sandals offer no support. Because yesterday you tripped over a loose paving stone and no one helped. They just watched and judged and probably bet drachma on whether you get back up. You look for water. It's not coming from a faucet. It's not filtered. It's in a jug, a clay jug, that may or may not have bugs in it, depending on how well your cousin remembered to cover it last night. Spoiler, he didn't. The water is lukewarm and tastes faintly of storage, but you drink it because you have to. Because dehydration is not poetic, and heat stroke doesn't care about your aesthetic. You eat bread, if you're lucky. It's yesterday's bread, dry, cracked, and vaguely rock-like. You tear at it with your teeth and hope your molars remember their training. You chase it with wine, not the good kind. The wine is watered down, slightly sour, and poured from a container that's never been cleaned properly. Still, it's breakfast. You take a breath, regret it. The air smells like smoke, sweat, and whatever died in the alley last night. There are no fragrant herbs in the air, no market stall saffron drifting on the breeze, just raw, unprocessed everything. And now the day begins. Your schedule is whatever life throws at you. Maybe it's farm work. Maybe you're helping build a roof that doesn't want to stay up. Maybe you're running errands for someone wealthier who thinks your name is Boy. Even though you're 36 and have a beard, you don't have a job. You have obligations. There's no salary, no weekend, no PTO. Just favors and exchanges, debts and promises, half-remembered agreements made over diluted wine and gritted teeth. And yes, you're exhausted before you even start. This is not the Athens of marble and reason. This is the Athens of cracked feet, sunburned necks, and finding out the hard way that your neighbor's dog is not tied up today. The philosophers, they exist, yes, but they don't talk to you. You're too busy working. And even if you had time to join a symposium, you'd need to bring something. Wine, food, conversation skills, none of which you can afford. Also, you'd need to be literate, and male, and wealthy, and politically relevant. You, tragically, are none of these things. Your best hope for inspiration is not Plato. It's a quiet moment without pain. A moment where no one's yelling, no one's bleeding, and nothing is leaking, dying, or requiring your immediate intervention. That's your version of philosophy. Silence that doesn't signal something terrible just happened. So now you're upright, hungry, half-hydrated, probably itchy, definitely sweaty, and fully aware that the entire rest of the day is waiting to challenge your will to exist. And yet, this is normal. This isn't a bad day. This isn't a punishment. This is just life. This is what most people in ancient Greece experienced. Give or take a spear wound, a plague, or an unfortunate encounter with a jealous god. This is the background radiation of survival in a civilization that gave us theatre, mathematics, and the Olympic Games, and also gave most of its citizens a strong incentive to die young. But hey, it gets worse. We haven't even reached the part with the public toilets, the clothing disasters, or the snake-related religious festivals. We're just getting started. This is Sand and Iron. Welcome to your day in ancient Greece. Hope you make it to dinner. So you're awake. Not rested, just awake. The difference matters. Your back feels like it slept on a bundle of spears wrapped in burlap. Your neck crackles when you turn your head. Your knees make a sound not heard since the last pottery kiln explosion. And you haven't even stood up yet. Your first thought of the day isn't, what should I accomplish today? It's, what bit me while I was asleep, and is it still attached? You rub your eyes. There's grit in them. Fine dust, from the street probably, or flaked off ceiling plaster from your aging, heat-cracked roof. It's always falling apart, just like you. The sun isn't even up, but the rooster is, crowing like a tiny, feathered warlord from the neighbor's courtyard. That rooster has no sense of timing, nor mercy. He crows when he wants, at what he wants. You suspect he's possessed. The sound reverberates through your thin walls like he's inside your skull, Then come the goats. Always the goats. They scream like someone is being murdered. And in a way, someone is your patience. Every morning, without fail, they launch into an operatic dirge of suffering because someone dared to milk them again. It's their only job. They hate it. You rise slowly, not because you want to savor the morning, but because every joint in your body needs a private conversation with gravity before it agrees to do anything. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and immediately feel the rough bite of the dirt floor under your bare feet. No rugs, no sandals, just earth, cold and gritty, slightly damp in that mysterious way that suggests your house has its own internal weather system. Somewhere near your toes, a beetle scuttles away, offended by your presence. You apologize instinctively. You're not sure to whom. You shuffle to the doorway. There's no door, by the way. Just a curtain, if you're lucky. And that curtain is probably faded linen or an old chiton someone couldn't be bothered to sew shut. It does not block sound. It barely blocks light. But it provides the illusion of privacy, which is the best kind available in ancient residential design. Your home, if we're using that term generously, consists of a central room, a small courtyard, and a corner for sleeping. No closets, no kitchen, no dedicated bathroom, no space between you and the people who raised you, work with you, and occasionally snore like volcanic eruptions. In the courtyard is your water jar, a large, round-bodied clay vessel, crusted with time and possibly mildew. You hope someone filled it the night before. You also hope no lizards fell into it overnight. That's happened before. Too many times. You pick it up. It's heavier than it should be. That's a good sign. Water. Or a very fat lizard. You don't have soap. You have water. That's enough. Technically. You pour it into a small basin, splash your face, and immediately gasp. It's cold. Always. The kind of cold that rewires your nerves. The kind of cold that makes your body temporarily forget your name. But now you're awake. Fully. Clean. Debatable. But alert. Definitely. You don't brush your teeth. That's not a thing. If you're diligent, maybe you chew on a twig or rinse with wine. Because if it's acidic, it's probably cleaning something, right? You've never heard the word plaque, but you've probably lost a few molars already. No one comments on it. You wipe your face dry with a scrap of cloth that once belonged to a tunic, now too full of holes to be worn. You use it for everything. Hands, face, minor blood, spilled wine, sweat. The cloth is your friend. It's also your towel, your napkin, and your personal hygiene strategy. Time to relieve yourself. Here's the process. You walk outside. Not for fresh air, but because the interior of your house was never designed to handle anything more biologically complicated than coughing. You head to a designated area. That's code for a hole you and your neighbors vaguely agreed on. It's behind a wall, or near a bush, or near a cracked pot that used to hold olives and now holds other things. No one talks about it, but everyone knows it. There is no toilet, no seat, no door. You squat. You hope no one walks by. Someone always walks by. And now comes the pesoi, the broken pottery shard. Rounded edges, ideally, shared by multiple people, undeniably. You try not to think about it too hard. You finish your business. You feel nothing but survival. No luxury, no peace. Just bodily completion and a faint sense of existential compromise. You stand, brush the dust from your knees, and re-enter your life. Now you must dress. The chiton, your garment of the day, is a single rectangle of fabric, maybe linen, maybe wool, dyed in a shade of faded uncertainty. It has 2 holes for your arms and 1 for your dignity, barely. You cinch it at the waist with a belt, a rope, a scrap of leather, or something you tied off a bag of barley 2 years ago. It holds. It has to. You're basically wearing a tablecloth and hoping the wind isn't feeling playful today. No socks, no underwear, no guarantee your left shoulder stays covered. And sandals, optional. If you have them, they're made of worn leather, tied with fraying laces that snap at the worst moment. The moment being, any moment. You step into the sun, or what will soon become merciless sunlight. It's not yet oppressive, but it's coming. Ancient Greece has exactly 2 temperatures, cool regret and oven with insects. Today looks like the latter. You shield your eyes. There's no hat, just your palm, and a resigned expression. Back inside, breakfast waits. Your options: bread, hard, wine, thin, maybe an olive if the gods smile upon you. No fruit, out of season. No cheese, your neighbour's goat is sick again. No meat. Who do you think you are, Zeus? You chew, slowly, carefully. The bread is harder than expected. It cracks, not breaks. You consider soaking it in the wine, but remember, that's tomorrow's ration. You chew harder. Eventually, it's food. There's no time to linger. The sun is rising. The village is waking up. You hear voices arguing about debts, dowries, and stolen chickens. The air smells like dust and ambition. You're not done preparing, but life doesn't wait. You glance at your feet, still dirty. You wipe them on the edge of the wall and hope the gods aren't watching. They probably are. They always are. You take one final breath, short, shallow, dusty, and just like that, your morning is over. You've survived the first 2 hours of the day. Congratulations. Only 14 more to go. And trust us, they get worse. Welcome to your full-time job. Existing. Let's talk about hygiene. Or more accurately, the ancient Greek concept of what barely qualifies as hygiene. Because while the philosophers were debating metaphysics, your armpits were launching a silent rebellion. Cleanliness may be next to godliness, but only if the gods live somewhere far away from here. To begin, let's establish one basic truth. You stink, not because you're lazy, not because you want to, but because there is no real way not to. Water is scarce, soap is mythical, and the communal standards for what counts as clean are aggressively forgiving. As long as your filth isn't visible from the next town over, you're doing fine. Let's start with the tools of the trade. First up, no soap. Well, no real soap. None of that frothy, lavender-scented, exfoliating miracle paste you slather on in the modern world. Here, your soap is olive oil. You smear it on your skin like some kind of oily lizard, and then scrape it off with a dull piece of metal called a strigil. The idea is, oil lifts the dirt, and the strigil takes it away, in theory. In reality, you're just spreading a thin layer of grime over slightly older grime and calling it personal care. Public baths exist, if you're in a city, and if you're lucky, and if you're not banned from them for offending someone's cousin last week. But even when you go, there's a line, a crowd, a risk of theft, and the knowledge that you're basically standing naked in a petri dish made of stone. Still, it's a bath. You go anyway. You sit on a slick bench. You share the water. You try not to make eye contact, or worse, foot contact. You emerge cleaner. Probably. Your teeth? Let's not talk about your teeth. You might chew on a twig. You might rinse your mouth with watered-down wine, hoping the alcohol burns away the sins of dinner. But you do not brush, you do not floss, and no one is telling you to avoid sugar because no one can afford sugar. The result, your smile is more weathered ruin than gleaming marble. If you have all your front teeth, you're practically a model. Your hair, long or short, clean or not, doesn't really matter. You don't shampoo. You may rinse occasionally, but mostly it gets tied back, pinned, or just left to do whatever nature intended. Head lice are common. So common, in fact, that delousing someone is considered an act of affection. Yes, sitting around a fire, picking tiny insects out of each other's scalps and squashing them with your fingernails is just another form of bonding. Love, in ancient Greece, comes with parasites. Now let's discuss the toilet situation. Spoiler, there isn't one. Not in your home, not in your neighbour's home, not even in the wealthier homes, unless they've invested in the luxury of a stone slab with a hole in it, which still goes straight into the ground. If you live in a village or rural area, and most people do, you go outside. You find a quiet spot, maybe behind a wall, maybe near a ditch, maybe in the corner of the yard where the grass already gave up. Privacy is minimal, smell is considerable. If you live in the city, there's a chance, just a chance, of a public latrine. This sounds better than it is. The public toilet is a long stone bench with a series of round holes. Beneath it, a trench that, if it's your lucky day, is still flowing with water. If not, it's just a pit of memories and regret. There are no stalls, no partitions. You sit elbow to elbow with other people, trying very hard to pretend you don't exist. It's not a toilet, it's a group project. Now, let's say you've finished. What do you use to clean yourself? Option 1. A ceramic shard called a pessoi. It's not soft, it's not disposable, it's not particularly sanitary, but it's available. Some are engraved with curses or enemies' names. The Greeks were efficient that way. Option 2. A sponge on a stick. If you're wealthy, urban, or imaginative, the sponge is communal. It gets rinsed, sometimes, in the same water that flows under the latrine. You do the math. Option 3. Leaves, rags, or wishful thinking. After all that, you wash your hands. Maybe, if water's available, if anyone's watching, if you remember. But remember, you're not living in a world where microscopic organisms are a known threat. You don't know about bacteria. You just know that sometimes people get sick, and no one really knows why. So you don't obsess. You just live and hope your body figures it out. Let's return to body odor. It is not shameful. It is expected. In fact, if you don't smell a bit earthy by mid-morning, people might think you're ill. Perfume exists, sure, but it's expensive, imported, meant for the wealthy, or religious ceremonies, not for hiding the fact that you've been sweating since the sun rose. Clothing hygiene. You own 1 or 2 tunics. That's it. You wear them until they wear out. Washing them involves dragging them to a river, beating them against rocks, and praying the dye doesn't run. You don't do it often. The tunics don't thank you for it. Your underarms are never truly dry. Your sandals, if you have them, are slick with dust and sweat. You don't wear socks. You don't even know what socks are. But you imagine they would feel like clouds. As the day goes on, your skin collects a rich tapestry of materials. Dust, smoke, pollen, olive oil, grease from lunch, ash from the fire, your neighbour's handshake residue, and probably some goat. This is your new epidermis now. You're not even mad about it. You just hope no one important asks you to stand close. At night, you do what counts as a bath. If it's summer, maybe you splash water from a bucket. If it's winter, maybe you wipe yourself down with a cloth that last saw a wash cycle in the Trojan War. You go to sleep not clean, but not actively dirty. It's the best you can hope for. And the worst part, you get used to it. The stink, the scraping, the communal nature of every single private moment. It all becomes background noise. You don't notice the smell anymore. You stop worrying about what's on your hands. You adjust to sleeping with sand in your ears and sweat on your chest. You become the world you live in. You dream of water, cool, clear water. Not the kind in jugs, the kind that flows, bubbles, cascades over polished tile, and carries away all your regrets. You've never seen a shower. You can't imagine one. But some part of your soul longs for it. A ghost of comfort you haven't met yet. So when you wake up the next day, sticky, itchy, and vaguely damp from sweat or dew or something else you'd rather not investigate, you'll repeat the same routine. Splash cold water on your face, smear oil if you have it, scrape it off. Rub your armpits with a cloth that probably doubles as your dinner napkin. Chew a twig, spit discreetly. You call that clean, and you mean it. Your chiton smells like yesterday, and the day before that. You adjust it anyway and pretend you're refreshed. It's easier than confronting the truth. You take a breath and immediately regret it. The air carries the scent of livestock, dust, and a neighbor who also gave up on washing anything after the Peloponnesian War. But you go on, because everyone else is doing the same thing. No one is clean, no one is fragrant. The standard for decency is so low, it could trip over a pebble. And that, somehow, is comforting. In ancient Greece, hygiene isn't about luxury. It isn't even about health. It's about ritual. A set of motions you repeat every day so the world feels slightly less wild. Even if your breath could melt marble. Even if you're exfoliating with dirt. Even if your best sponge has a name. You move forward. Because tomorrow will be exactly the same. And that, in its own grim way, is the cleanest feeling you'll get. Your day begins with hunger. Not the lazy kind you solve with brunch and cold brew. The primal kind. The stomach-gripping, rib-creaking emptiness that doesn't politely knock. It kicks down the door. You're in ancient Greece, and your breakfast options are limited. No cereal, no bacon, no scrambled eggs. You might, if the household isn't struggling, get a crust of barley bread. Dry, tough, designed more for survival than satisfaction. It's called paximadi. Sounds exotic. Tastes like a building material. You dunk it in diluted wine to soften it up. Otherwise, you risk breaking a tooth before noon. That's your starter. If you're lucky, and the household budget hasn't been annihilated by taxes, weather, or war, maybe you get some cheese. Not soft brie or anything that melts in your mouth. It's goat cheese, sharp, salty, a little suspect. You eat it anyway, because hunger has made you humble. There is no coffee. Let's just pause and grieve for that. No roasted beans, no warm mug, no caffeine-fueled sense of purpose. The closest you'll get to stimulation is a splash of watered-down wine, which tastes like regret and does very little to sharpen your mind. There are no utensils. Your hands are your forks. Your dignity is on vacation. You might scoop food with a crust of bread. You might lick your fingers. No one judges you, because everyone is doing the same thing. Civilized chaos at every meal. If someone in the household is especially ambitious, maybe there's some porridge, boiled barley or wheat, thick and bland, flavored with honey if you're lucky, and onions if you're not. A dollop of fig paste might show up, turning breakfast into a rare festival of texture. That is, if the figs haven't been hoarded by someone higher up the social ladder. If you live on the coast, fish might be a breakfast food. Not grilled, not seasoned, not served with lemon. Just small, salty, and sometimes still staring at you. You chew through bones, swallow the tail, and pray it stays down. Protein, the ancient way. Now let's talk about wine. It's not a luxury drink, it's hydration. Water isn't always clean, and everyone knows that if you drink it straight from the well, you're rolling dice with your intestines. So you pour a bit of wine into your water to kill the bad stuff. But remember, this isn't a party. This isn't Dionysus descending from Olympus to hand you a mimosa. This is damage control. You eat fast. There's no lingering over breakfast. No podcast, no morning news. Just chewing, swallowing, and going. If you're wealthy, maybe you sit down. If you're not, and you're probably not, you eat standing up, hovering near a doorway, bread in one hand, anxiety in the other. And here's the thing. This is your only guaranteed meal. Lunch is uncertain. Dinner is a negotiation with fate. So you eat what's in front of you, no matter how hard, bland, or vaguely fermented it is. You mop up crumbs, lick your fingers, and resist the urge to weep over a memory of pancakes. Because ancient Greece doesn't care about your emotional attachments to breakfast foods. Now that you've eaten, now what? You're not full. You're not even close. But your stomach isn't empty anymore. And that's the best you can hope for. You stretch, yawn, and pretend your jaw didn't just crack from biting into barley concrete. You wipe your hands on your tunic, the same one you wore yesterday and the day before, and step out into the sunlight, which immediately reminds you that deodorant does not exist. You are now ready for the day. Meanwhile, your neighbor's breakfast might have been even more pitiful. A spoonful of lentils, a pinch of olives, dregs of last night's dinner, a prayer to Demeter, and a lot of chewing. This isn't a land of plenty. This is a land of make do and shut up. And while we're at it, let's debunk the myth of abundance. Yes, the Greeks loved feasting, but feasting was rare, special, public, or reserved for the elite. Most people ate like they were one bad harvest away from ruin, which they were. A quick word on animal products. Milk, mostly for cheese. Not much drinking. Eggs, sometimes. But chickens aren't machines, and most eggs go to richer households or temple offerings. Meat, only on festival days, religious rites, or after a sacrifice. Your breakfast is not holy enough to deserve lamb. So you carry on with your dried bread, your fish jerky, and your diluted grape juice. You chew in silence, watching a goat sniff your sandal, and you wonder, is this as good as it gets? The answer is yes. This is peak ancient Greek breakfast. You're living the dream, if that dream involves a lot of chewing and no flavor. And yet, people survived, thrived even. Not on variety, not on luxury, but on consistency. A kind of slow, grinding rhythm of grain and oil and fermented things that keeps bodies moving. Breakfast is fuel, not joy. There's no Instagramming your plate, no hashtags, no influencers recommending 5 ways to elevate your ancient barley cake. There's just you, and the distant hope that dinner might be hot. The table, if you have one, is shared. If you're enslaved, you don't eat until after the family. If you're a child, you wait your turn. If you're the cook, you eat last and cold. Hierarchy isn't suspended just because you're hungry. You don't complain, or at least, not loudly. because somewhere out there, a Spartan is probably eating boiled pig's blood stew and calling it gourmet. And no one wants to be the whiner in a society that praises suffering as virtue. The food pyramid doesn't exist. There are no vitamins, no calorie counts, no doctors telling you to reduce carbs. You eat what's available. You live as long as the gods allow. And if your breakfast is weirdly crunchy, you don't ask questions. You assume it's intentional, or just your turn to suffer. Maybe, once in a while, something delightful appears. A bit of honey, some dried fruit, a surprise egg. For a moment, breakfast becomes bearable. Then it's gone, and the hard crust returns. Food is sacred in this world, not because it's delicious, but because it's scarce. It's wrapped in ritual, offerings, sacrifice, stories, myths. You don't just eat, you negotiate with nature, gods, and fortune for the right to keep eating. Every bite is a small victory. So when your breakfast ends, when you've licked the last bit of fig mush from your fingers and downed your lukewarm wine water, you square your shoulders. You're not full, but you're not starving. That's the bar. And today, you've cleared it. Now go out there. Go trade, go plow, go train, go worship. Your body has its fuel. Your hands are sticky. Your breath is noticeable. And none of it matters. Because food here isn't about indulgence. It's about function. About stretching the little you have into something that keeps you moving. Keeps you from passing out in the agora. Keeps your bones working long enough to survive another harvest, another skirmish, another tribute to the gods. Your fuel isn't fancy, but it's yours, and it better last, because lunch, that's a rumour, and dinner's a coin toss. You've eaten, barely. Now it's time to live, which in ancient Greece means working until you forget what joy felt like. There are no weekends, no paid time off, no ergonomic chairs or flex hours. There is you, your back, the sun, and a job that does not care whether or not you slept well. If you're a farmer, and let's be honest, you probably are, your day begins before sunrise and ends when your body gives up. You plough, plant, harvest, dig, weed, carry, sweat. The tools are basic. The labour is relentless, the yield is uncertain, and the soil, it hates you. It's rocky, stubborn, and dry enough to crack open your hopes and dreams. You push a wooden plough. It's heavy, crooked, and dragged by an animal that resents you. You guide it through dirt that crunches like burnt toast and splits into fragments just to annoy you. You sweat, a lot. You don't have sunscreen. You don't have a hat. You don't have the luxury of complaining. The sun is your tyrant now. If the harvest fails, and it often does, you starve, or sell what little you have, or go into debt, or offer sacrifices to the gods and hope they remember you fondly. Spoiler, they usually don't. If you're a craftsman, your life isn't easier, just different. You make pottery, sandals, tools, armour, whatever your trade is. Your workshop is hot, crowded, smoky, and one bad order away from collapsing financially. There's no Etsy, no storefront, just a hope that the agora isn't too full of other desperate artisans shouting louder than you. You call yourself a skilled worker. The market calls you replaceable. If you're a woman, and not enslaved, and not married to someone wealthy, your job is everything. You grind grain for hours. You fetch water. You sew. You spin. You cook. You clean. You tend the animals. You patch the roof. You raise the children. You avoid eye contact with the neighbour who insists he saw an omen in a goat's sneeze. You do it all, and then some. And you're still expected to smile politely if guests arrive unexpectedly and need wine. If you're enslaved, labor defines your entire existence. You wake up working, you sleep at the edge of exhaustion, you eat when allowed, speak when permitted. And the labor? It varies. Some are house slaves, cleaning, serving, preparing food. Others work in mines, inhuman, brutal, deadly mines where men suffocate in dust and darkness. Others row ships, others till land. Others build the temples we'll all admire centuries later without realizing they were made with sweat and suffering no one remembers. And if you're lucky enough to be a citizen man, the ideal worker, soldier, philosopher hybrid that society adores, you're still not safe. You might work your farm all day and still owe taxes to the city-state. You might serve in the phalanx if war breaks out. You might be called to jury duty, yes, jury duty, and sit on a stone bench all day judging cases with 20 other sweaty men. Civic duty is exhausting, especially when it comes with no air circulation. War, by the way, is always lurking. You may be drafted into the army, hoplite ranks, shield in one hand, spear in the other, and absolutely zero medical insurance. Marching for days, sleeping in dirt, fighting strangers who also didn't want to be there. All because your city has beef with their city over a goat, a god, or an insult that happened 50 years ago. Then there's trade work, if you're a merchant or sailor, which sounds exciting until you realize half the ships sink, half the cargo gets stolen, and every harbour official wants a bribe. You travel for weeks, you risk pirates, you eat salted fish until your jaw forgets what joy feels like. And when you get home, the market's already saturated with the same olive oil you just hauled from Corinth. Business is booming, just not for you. And throughout all this, there's no break. There is no HR department. There's no overtime pay. There's no such thing as burnout, because being tired doesn't excuse you from needing to survive. Labor isn't just physical, it's mental. You calculate how many beans to plant, how many goats you can afford, how much wine to water down before the neighbors notice. You worry about taxes, about omens, about whether the gods will punish you for skipping a sacrifice because you ran out of barley. Every day is a new crisis. Every hour is another balancing act between exhaustion and obligation. And if you think city jobs are easier, think again. Athenian clerks worked long hours keeping records in wax or on papyrus, with no margin for error. A scribe might copy the same decree a dozen times by hand, all while seated on a backless stool in a smoky office. It's thrilling stuff, if you enjoy slow blindness and permanent back pain. Children work too. By 7 or 8, you're already fetching water, herding animals, cleaning tools, or being trained for whatever miserable trade your family expects you to carry on. Your childhood ends around the time your knees stop wobbling. Labor is not glamorous. It's not empowering. It's not a calling. It's the only option. You work to survive. You survive to work. And the cycle doesn't break unless something breaks you first. Let's say it rains for a week. Crops fail. Let's say you get injured. No doctor. No time off. Let's say a god gets offended. A temple burns. A field goes dry. Your luck disintegrates. Your job is your lifeline. But that lifeline is frayed and dangling over a pit. And if, somehow, you get a moment to breathe, that's when religion sneaks in. You pour libations. You whisper prayers. You burn incense. You ask Athena or Apollo or whoever's listening to, please, please just let the goat stop dying. Then you go back to it, because faith doesn't milk the animals. Your hands are blistered. Your knees ache. Your shoulders pop, your eyes blur, and the day still isn't over. There's evening work, mending, tending, cleaning, preparing for tomorrow, sweeping out the day's failures before the sun goes down. You don't collapse. You fold neatly like laundry, and then you sleep, knowing full well that everything you did today, you'll do again tomorrow. This is work in ancient Greece. There's no upward mobility. There's no paid internship that leads to a job in Athens' booming amphora market. There's just survival, repetition, and a slow accumulation of wear and tear on your spirit. You wake, you labor, you ache, you sleep, and somehow you do it again, because it's that, or starve. Welcome to the spiritual life of ancient Greece, where belief isn't a private matter. It's your daily insurance policy against divine vengeance. Here, gods aren't distant or metaphorical. They're everywhere, all the time, and they're nosy. Your crops fail. Must have offended Demeter. Stubbed your toe. Apollo's probably mad. Rained on your laundry. Poseidon's just being petty. You don't worship because it comforts you. You worship because not worshipping might get your house smote. Ritual is survival. Sacrifice is strategy. You begin your day with a nod to Hestia, goddess of the hearth. That's not optional. You don't want your fire to go out, literally or metaphorically. If you're in a wealthier home, there's a tiny shrine by the hearth, maybe with a bit of olive oil and a prayer. If you're poorer, your shrine is a shelf with a cracked vase and hope. You mutter a few words, pour a small offering, wine, oil, grains, and ask for a day without death or disaster. The bar is low. Religion isn't something you do on holidays. It's something you live. Every step, every meal, every sneeze has a divine angle. You can't walk down a street without passing a Herm, a stone pillar with Hermes' face and prominent anatomical details. And yes, you greet it, because not greeting it might bring bad luck. The gods are petty, not evil, just moody, vain, easily insulted. Say the wrong thing? Oops, your olive press breaks. Forget an offering? There goes your boat in a surprise storm. Laugh during a ritual. You've just bought yourself a mysterious illness and a lecture from the village elder. There are hundreds of gods. Sure, you know the big 12, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Athena, and their dramatic siblings. But there are so many more. Local gods, river spirits, 3 nymphs, household guardians, minor deities with one job and unlimited wrath. You never know who's listening, so you play it safe. You pray constantly. You sacrifice constantly. You apologize constantly. Let's talk about sacrifice. It's not symbolic. It's very literal. Animals die. A lot. You burn bones and fat on the altar. That's the god's portion. You keep the meat for feasting. This is how you say thank you, sorry, please, or I didn't mean to. Big sacrifices for big events. Weddings, harvests, wars. Small ones for small problems, like your goat sneezing weird. Temples are everywhere, not churches, not places for quiet reflection. Temples are homes for the gods. The statue inside, that's not just decoration, it is the god. You don't sit in a pew, you don't sing hymns. You stand outside, burn stuff, and hope your gift makes it to Olympus. If it doesn't, well, the next thunderstorm is on you. Festivals are your only real break from labor. And even then, they're mandatory religious duties. You parade through the city, you sing, you carry statues, you fast, you feast. You reenact myths that usually involve someone being turned into a tree. Some festivals get wild. Think wine, dancing, masks, shouting, and Dionysus smiling ominously in the background. Others are solemn, silent, strange. And if you laugh during the wrong part, the gods take notes. You dream, that's a message. You trip, that's a message. A bird lands on your roof and squawks 3 times before flying east, that's definitely a message. Interpretation is key, and interpretation is chaos. There are priests, sure, but also oracles, seers, dream interpreters, and that one old man who lives near the cemetery and just knows things. You ask them for clarity. They give you riddles. You thank them anyway. The most famous oracle lives in Delphi, the navel of the world, they say. You make the journey. You bring a goat. You wait in line. When it's your turn, the Pythia, high on sacred fumes, utters some cryptic statement that sounds like a proverb written by someone who never met a comma. Victory will come, but not as expected. Helpful? Not at all. But you smile and nod, because arguing with Apollo's mouthpiece is a death wish. Religion isn't a binary belief system. It's not, do you believe or not? It's, how much do you want to risk being cursed for negligence? So you believe, or pretend to, or hedge your bets. You toss grain into the fire, just in case. Even criminals get religion. Before executions, they're offered a chance to pray, not because it saves them, but because everyone's terrified of vengeful spirits. Death doesn't end your social obligations. In fact, it creates new ones. Burials must be done right. Wrong rituals equals restless dead. So you bury your loved ones with care. You burn offerings. You hold funerary feasts. You visit their graves. You avoid speaking ill of them unless you want to be haunted. Ghosts are real, or close enough that no one wants to find out the hard way. You might own a household shrine to Zeus Ctesios, protector of the pantry. You might hang amulets to keep out evil spirits. You might burn garlic at crossroads. You might avoid speaking certain names aloud. You might spit 3 times to undo a bad omen. Religion isn't organized. It's layered superstition, wearing a robe and carrying a chicken. Even medicine is religious. Doctors chant. They consult dreams. They ask the gods before amputating. If that doesn't work, you go to a healing temple. You sleep inside. Let the god visit you in a dream, and hope the dream doesn't involve snakes. It usually involves snakes. Children learn rituals before they learn writing. They pour wine, burn incense, memorize hymns. Not because it's cute, because it's essential. Every Greek is a priest, at some level. Every act is a potential ritual. And if you don't play along, you're not just foolish, you're dangerous. A threat to civic order, a walking offense to the gods. Ask Socrates how that worked out for him. Spoiler, it ends with hemlock. This is not organized religion in the way you know it. This is improv survival theology. And whether or not the gods are real almost doesn't matter, because everyone acts like they are. And that belief, that constant spiritual bargaining, that instinctive fear of causing offense to invisible titans with thunderbolts and grudges, it runs your life. To live in ancient Greece is to constantly assess and be assessed, not for your personality or your passions or how well you parallel park a chariot. Number for your status. Public life is not a performance. It's a battleground of reputation. First question, are you a citizen? If yes, congratulations. You are male, born to Athenian parents, and legally allowed to open your mouth in the assembly. Your opinion matters, not because it's good, but because the law says so. If no, welcome to the vast and murmuring underclass of women, slaves, foreigners, and resident aliens. Your job is to stay quiet and stay useful, preferably both. You do not vote. You do not debate. You do not get a statue unless you do something heroic or accidentally die in a way that flatters the city. Public life is everything if you're a citizen. You attend the assembly where politics and drama blur into a single shouted mess. You sit on juries, enormous ones, sometimes 500 citizens strong, who vote with bronze dais and indignant facial expressions. You volunteer for magistracies, not because it pays well, it doesn't, but because your honor is on the line. A good citizen is active. A good citizen is visible. A good citizen is tired. You don't just exist. You perform your worth. You show up to festivals. You give speeches in the agora. You wear your cloak just so, with the perfect fold, the perfect posture, the perfect amount of I am important but still relatable. Even your silence is interpreted. Too quiet? You're suspicious. Too loud? You're arrogant. Too clever? You're dangerous. Wealth helps. If you're rich, you fund public works, sponsor a play, pay for a warship, and when people thank you, you shrug modestly like, oh, this old trireme, just doing my part. This is called liturgical giving, civic charity, mandatory by custom if not law. You buy your status with ships, statues, and chorus lines. The poor admire you. The other rich resent you. The gods, theoretically, notice you. But status is fragile. Too much pride, and you're accused of hubris, a social sin worse than murder. Laugh at the wrong god. Exile. Win too many court cases. People assume bribery. Throw a party too grand. Now you're a tyrant in the making. So you balance. You flex, but politely. You signal power without arrogance. Generosity without ambition. Confidence without overstepping the ever-blurry line between respected statesman and suspiciously popular demagogue. If you're a metoikos, a resident foreigner, life is complicated. You live in Athens, you pay taxes, you serve in the military, you might run a business, make decent money, but you'll never vote, never own land, never be fully trusted. You are a permanent guest at a party that's never yours. Now let's talk about women. Public life? Technically not for you. In theory, you stay home. Manage the household. Keep a low profile. But in reality, women do move in public spaces, especially during festivals, religious rites and funerals, just discreetly. You walk with a servant. You avoid speaking to men. You vanish into temples like shadows at dusk. Visibility is a risk. Reputation is your only armor. And what about slaves? You are the invisible engine of the polis. You clean, cook, carry, farm, row, tutor, serve and build. You are everywhere and nowhere. Your status is legally property. Your voice, even when loud, is treated like background noise. You do not appear in public life except to support someone else's. You make the world run, and in return, the world pretends you're not there. Clothing, status, accent, status, how you walk, where you sit, what you say, who you nod to, all status. There's a constant, unspoken ranking system, and everyone participates, because not participating is social suicide. Even leisure is class-coded. Poor citizens wrestle in public gymnasiums. Rich citizens host symposia, drinking parties with hired musicians and awkward poetry recitations. You don't just drink, you philosophize dramatically under oil lamps. If someone falls asleep mid-discussion about the soul's shape, it's tradition to draw something embarrassing on their face in charcoal. And don't get too comfortable, because public opinion is volatile. One day, you're a hero. The next, you're voted into exile by a crowd that got nervous about how many followers you had at lunch That's ostracism, a real political tool. Vote someone too powerful out of town for 10 years. No trial, no appeal. Just a clay shard with your name and a one-way ticket to irrelevance. So what do? You maintain balance. You give to the gods. You flatter the crowd. You avoid scandal. You pretend your rivals are friends and your friends aren't rivals. And most of all, you stay in public. Because absence is suspicious. Silence is guilt. Invisibility is not safety. It's social death. If you live in Sparta, it's different. Status is tied to military service, discipline, obedience, scar tissue. But for most of Greece, especially Athens, public life is theatre. You act your role. You deliver your lines. You die before you're irrelevant. Children watch this, learn this. Before they write their own names, they learn the names of their ancestors, who they're descended from, who disgraced the family, who was exiled, who funded a theatre. Identity isn't internal, it's ancestral, it's communal, it's fragile. Because in ancient Greece, public life isn't about individuality. It's about placing yourself in the right slot in a hierarchy that's been hand-carved into the city like a warning. Stay in your lane, know your rank, and never, ever forget, someone's always watching. You've worked, you've suffered, you've sacrificed to gods you're not sure are listening. Now, at last, it's time for entertainment, but not the kind you're used to. There's no TV, no internet, no streaming services ready to deliver an algorithm-approved hit of dopamine. Instead, you get myths. Big, loud, messy myths. Greek stories are not subtle. They are blood-soaked, lust-filled, morally questionable epics designed to entertain and educate and traumatize, often at the same time. You've heard them since childhood. Zeus turns into a swan. Hera gets jealous and turns someone into a cow. Athena explodes fully armored out of someone's head. Normal stuff. These stories aren't bedtime tales. They are cultural software, installing values, fears, and social norms via spectacle. And like all good software, they occasionally crash. Let's say you're at a festival. The city is buzzing. Market stalls are packed. Music plays. Someone's already drunk on watered wine. You're here for the theatre, but not the kind with velvet seats and overpriced snacks. This is the open-air amphitheatre, where 15,000 people sit on stone benches under the sun for hours to watch masked actors scream about fate. It's glorious. There are two flavours, tragedy and comedy. Tragedy is where everyone dies beautifully and learns nothing. Comedy is where no one dies, but everyone gets mocked, especially politicians. Both genres are sacred. Yes, really. The gods are patrons of this drama. Most festivals are dedicated to Dionysus, because who else would sponsor a genre where half the characters are crying and the other half are naked? You settle in for a trilogy of plays. No popcorn, but someone near you has figs. Close enough. The chorus enters. A group of elaborately costumed singers who chant, comment, and offer helpful summaries in case you got lost in Act 1. They tell you what to feel, and you feel it, loudly, because Greek audiences don't sit in polite silence. They cheer, they boo, they cry. They shout advice to doomed characters who, tragically, cannot hear them through time. On stage, a king learns he accidentally married his mum. Everyone gasps, even though they knew this was coming, even though they've seen this play before. It still hits. Later, a comedy pokes fun at the city's leaders, its philosophers, its social climbers, its fussy neighbours. The jokes are crude. The costumes are cruder. One actor has a giant foam phallus and makes 20 jokes in a row about olives. You laugh hard, because this is what it means to be free, to laugh at power, in public, with the gods watching and chuckling along. But theatre isn't just entertainment, it's moral therapy. You're supposed to feel something deep, awe, catharsis, guilt, relief. The idea is that by watching others suffer magnificently, you get your own emotional mess untangled. For a few hours, you forget your back pain and your neighbour's sick goat. For a few hours, you are more than a labouring human with sunburn and debt. You are part of a story. Stories are everywhere. They're painted on pottery, sung by travelling bards, told around fires while someone roasts a fish and complains about the price of bronze. You don't read them. Most people are illiterate. You hear them. You feel them. You remember them like they happened to your cousin's cousin's cousin. You know the tale of Persephone, kidnapped by Hades, her mother's grief turning the earth to winter. You know about Achilles, nearly invincible, but undone by pride and poor foot armor. You know about Icarus, whose wings melted because he got cocky near the sun. These are not fairy tales. These are behavior manuals with explosions. And the gods? They're not above the drama. In fact, they are the drama. They cheat. They lie. They shapeshift. They punish mortals for things the gods themselves did last week. It's a cosmic soap opera. One with thunderbolts, curses, transformations, and tragic irony so dense you could carve it in marble. But that's the point. The gods aren't perfect. They're relatable, in a terrifying, dysfunctional way. They represent nature, chaos, human desire with no accountability. And watching their stories unfold makes your own nonsense seem smaller, more survivable, less cosmically cursed. Even games and competitions are stories. The Olympics aren't just about muscles and oil. They're about heroes, rivalries, victory granted by divine favor. You cheer for your city. You place bets. You watch someone throw a discus so hard you swear it cracked the earth. And when your guy wins, you retell it for years, as myth, as proof, as civic pride. Music, poetry, same thing. Every performance is a tribute to someone, a god, a hero, a dead relative. There is no such thing as art for art's sake. Art is function. Art is ritual. Art is how you remember the names of the fallen and make sure your story doesn't disappear. Even gossip is sacred. That tale about your neighbour's cousin, who was caught sacrificing at the wrong temple on the wrong day in the wrong shoes. Morality tale. Everything's a lesson. Everything's a narrative. And don't forget the oracles. Their riddles become stories. Beware the man with one sandal becomes prophecy, then legend, then bedtime warning for generations of children with oddly mismatched footwear. So yes, you're entertained. But it's a dangerous kind of entertainment. The kind that doesn't let you forget how thin the line is between ordinary and epic, between mortal and cautionary tale. You could become a myth. You just don't want it to be the kind where your hubris leads to divine bird attacks and permanent embarrassment. In ancient Greece, stories aren't just stories. They're history, warning, comedy, faith, news and therapy, all tangled into one explosive fireball of meaning. And when the play ends, you stand, you stretch, you nod to your neighbour, and you head back home to get ready for another day of labour, ritual, social performance, and barely salted barley bread, because that's life here. And the gods, they're always watching, probably judging your taste in tragedy. You've made it this far, which is impressive. Statistically, many don't. Now it's time to talk about the part no one survives. Death. In ancient Greece, death is not poetic. It is not peaceful. It is not something people put on greeting cards with watercolor flowers. It's messy. It's sudden. It's almost always inconvenient. You can die from war, disease, infection, childbirth, bad shellfish, falling off a cart, being in the wrong place when someone sneezes ominously. Medicine is primitive. Hygiene is hopeful. And God's help you if your physician believes too strongly in the power of leeches. No one escapes this topic. Not children, not elders, not heroes, not peasants. Everyone knows someone who died. There are no hospitals. There are temples. There are prayers. There are jars of questionable herbs and the occasional goat-based remedy. You get sick. You wait. You sweat. You bargain with gods. You console dreams. You whisper offerings to ask for just a little more time. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you're dead before the next sunrise. And war? War is not glory. War is luck. You might wear bronze. You might march in formation. But all it takes is one lucky spear, one ambush, one chariot wheel snapping off, and you're face down in dirt. The Iliad makes war sound noble, but real battle smells like blood, fear, and someone screaming in Doric behind you. And if you survive, you might come home a hero, or you might come home broken, limping, and haunted by every friend who didn't. Death is always close. So what do? You plan for it. You prepare. Funeral rites are not optional. You bury your dead. You burn offerings. You weep properly. The rituals are detailed, specific, and not doing them means the soul gets stuck. A restless shade. A ghost without peace. Even your enemies deserve proper burial. Yes, even them. Because an unburied soul, that's a public health crisis and a supernatural hazard. You light lamps for the dead. You pour wine into the ground. You whisper names at night. Because forgetting the dead is dangerous. It invites them back. And it doesn't stop there. There are omens everywhere. An owl hooting at the wrong hour. Bad sign. A dream where your teeth fall out. Worse. A sudden cold wind in the middle of a clear day. Someone nearby is about to meet Karen. The fear of death is constant, not in the modern existential way. In the did I forget to sacrifice to Hecate this week way. The underworld is real, or real enough. When you die, your soul leaves your body like mist, soft, invisible, and judged immediately. If you're lucky, you pass into the fields of asphodel, the underworld's bland waiting room. If you were heroic, the Elysian fields await, basically VIP afterlife. If you were awful, welcome to Tartarus, the pit of eternal punishment, staffed by creative sadists and administered by judges who take things very personally. And let's not forget Hades himself, not evil, just bureaucratic. He runs the underworld like an overworked civil servant. He doesn't cause death, he just collects it, which is somehow more terrifying. But death isn't just physical. There's social death too. Be exiled from your city. That's worse than dying. Be disgraced. You're living among people who won't say your name, who won't sit near you, who act like your existence is contagious. Your reputation is your soul. And once it's gone, good luck getting it back. And then there's fear of haunting. Ghosts are real. Ask anyone. They whisper in olive groves. They drift near old wells. They make torches flicker and cats hiss. There are rituals to keep them out. Garlic under the threshold. Iron nails in doorposts. Protective amulets shaped like eyes. Don't speak the name of someone who died badly. Don't go near crossroads at night. Don't look back if you feel a chill and hear footsteps. Seriously, don't look back. Children are told stories not to scare them, but to prepare them. because no one gets out of this life untouched by grief. And no one wants to be the reason a family line gets haunted for 3 generations because someone forgot the barley cakes. The fear is practical. It keeps people polite. It keeps cities orderly. It keeps sacrifices burning and memories alive. Because the real fear isn't the moment you die. It's that your name vanishes. Your story ends. Your bones are misplaced. And no one sings the funeral dirge. To be forgotten is to truly die. So people remember. They carve names. They build tombs. They dedicate small statues. They tell your story, embellished of course, but still yours. And every time your name is spoken, that's victory, that's immortality, that's survival. And when you die, and you will, the world keeps spinning. The sun rises, the city wakes, someone sweeps the courtyard, and your name either gets remembered or it gets buried beneath newer stories. But the fear stays, because ancient Greece is not a world built for comfort. It's a world built for memory. And the only thing worse than dying is being forgotten. You've survived the day. You've eaten the barley. You've avoided divine wrath mostly. You performed your social duties and maybe only slightly offended one minor household spirit. And now you're looking out over the city. The lamps are lit, the sky is dark, and the marble buildings, even the broken ones, glow like bones in moonlight. What do you feel? Awe? Probably. Confusion? Understandable. Exhaustion? Guaranteed. Because living in ancient Greece isn't just hard, it's relentless. There's no pause button, no weekend, no anonymous coffee shop where you can disappear for an hour and doom scroll. Everything you do is public, meaningful, and subject to cosmic judgment. You've walked the dusty roads. You've stood in line to use a communal toilet with no privacy and lots of flies. You've paid tribute to a pantheon of feuding gods who think human lives are chess pieces with poor posture. And you've done all of this while trying not to get stabbed, starve, or become a mythological cautionary tale. So how do people live like this? They don't just live, they endure. They find meaning in ritual, pride in suffering, honor in performance. They measure time in festivals and offerings, in stories passed down, in sacrifices offered not because they want to, but because they must. Because not doing so risks everything. This isn't nostalgia. We're not romanticizing cracked pottery and barley fatigue, but we are remembering that the people who lived here were real, not statues, not shadows in museums, not footnotes. They were loud, complicated, tired, funny, proud, and occasionally very bad at building roofs. And when you walk through the ruins, when you squint at the surviving columns and imagine what stood between them, you aren't seeing failure. You're seeing residue of dreams, of ambition, of people who dared to believe that something they built could last longer than they did. They were right, because we're still talking about them. You might not remember every name. You might not fully grasp the politics, the myths, the difference between Doric and Ionic columns. But you remember this, that to survive here was to be part of something bigger, even if that something was frequently frustrating and covered in sheep. And that's the quiet miracle, that they lived full, stubborn, meaningful lives in a world where death lurked in water jars and childbirth, where gods threw tantrums and the neighbors never stopped gossiping. And still, they built cities, they wrote plays, they raised children, they looked at the stars and asked, "What's out there?" Then they named those stars after their stories. And the stories, absurd, messy, magnificent, still burn in the sky. So number you, modern, soft, absurdly clean you, would not last a day here. But you've walked through it in your mind. You've tasted it, if only faintly. And that's something. Because history doesn't need you to reenact it. It just needs you to remember. So sleep. Dream of marble. Dream of sandals. Dream of a world where gods meddled and mortals endured. And tomorrow, wake up in your own world, with plumbing, democracy, kind of, and far fewer curses. You've earned it.